Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Melanie Blake, the Director of Classical Pursuits, and I'm here today with Wendy O'Brien, a seminar leader at Classical Pursuits, a philosopher who has more than 30 years teaching experience, an interviewer for the upcoming Toronto International Festival of Authors, among other things. And I'm here today to talk very briefly with Wendy about her upcoming Classical Pursuits seminar on Pat Barker's Regeneration trilogy that tells the story of real life people and fictional characters in World War One, during World War One. So I just have one question for Wendy, so just so you can get to know her a little bit and learn what you can expect from our seminar. So Wendy, welcome. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Melanie. It's so nice to be here with you.
And my question is, as we talked about, it's kind of a big question. In looking at the work of a UK-based critic named Esther McCallum Stewart, I found reference to another scholar, a French historiographer named Jean Norton Creux. And he says that the public accepts ordinary novels as fiction, but takes war novels seriously as if they were depositions. And I think in her trilogy of novels, Pat Barker, she only heightens this tension between fiction and a deposition, supposed to be facts only, right? By writing novels that bring together real people, such as Wilfrid Owen, and totally invented characters, such as Billy Pryor. And what do you make of that tension? And should John Creux says we should take war novels seriously, like depositions, or the public does do this. How should we take this Regeneration trilogy?
Thanks. It's such a good question. It's a juicy question, which is always my favorite. Melanie, you made me work and think hard and long and do some research about what Barker herself said about this question. I think she's writing very purposefully right at this intersection between fact and fiction. I think she's choosing it for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because she said in several interviews, she said, the first thing she ever wanted to write about was World War One, and the reason why was her grandfather had been bayoneted during World War One, and she would watch him when he would wash, and he would take off his shirt, and she would see the scars, but he would never tell the story about what happened, at least not until he was a very old man. So she saw already that somewhere between the factual element, what happened in the war, and the person that she knew, she needed to sort of fill in the blanks between them, that she needed to tell a story that made sense of these injuries that her grandfather had, that weaved together the facts that as she grew older and did a lot of research on World War One in preparation for writing these books, that would weave together what we know for sure, that kind of realistic background, the history that Creux makes reference to, with the person that she knew, her grandfather. Like, how do you link those two things together? And I think she situates these novels, the Regeneration series, right at that crux, because she was telling us something about herself and about her own background and where she comes from as a writer and what inspired her. Start with history, fill in the blanks to give us the fullness of the people that were involved, but also about, history itself. There are so many things about World War One. We have, remnants of a story. We have little bits and pieces of, we have the uniforms, we have the memorials, we have the crosses, and we have so much that's still missing. And, to really understand that history requires us to use both those kind of historiographical elements or objects, but we also have to fill in the blanks, or else we only have objects. We don't have people. We don't have a story. We don't have that same momentum to think about what we could change and what we could do differently. So I think that that's really important, right? That she was wanting to be and to write in the space in between where realism and fiction just touch each other, to get us to think about both how we tell the story of World War I, how we tell the story of the lives of people, as you mentioned, like Wilfrid Owen, Siegfried Sassoon, W.H. Rivers, who's the main character, but also how do we fill in the blanks and turn them into something more than just historical figures, something that can inspire us. Another reason I think that, she positions herself in this moment is she's very interested in the soldier's experience. Rivers is there as a psych. If you don't know, W.H. Rivers was a psychiatrist. He was an anthropologist. He was a medical doctor. He was really well versed in Freud at a time when not many people would have admitted that they read Freud, and that he was interested in the idea of trauma and of its effects. He believed in shell shock when it was still very, very controversial. Most people during World War I still believed that, they were cowards or they were weak. The idea of, this being a true mental health crisis, it was unheard of. Rivers took it seriously in a way. And I think that why she likes to write it in this space is it's the soldier story that she's getting at, and the soldiers themselves in these novels, the beautiful evocations of what they were and what they lost. Well, they lost their words. In the case of Billy Pryor is interesting. He becomes voiceless and memoryless. That's harder to say than you think. Memoryless. And the thing about him is that, he has to recover both of those. He has to learn to tell the story, to link together the little dots and images that he has and write a narrative. And so it's very interesting that his story of reconstructing his life is also the author's story of reconstructing her grandfather's life, which is also, if you think about it, anybody who wants to take on literary realism, that's their job, right? She's kind of putting to the forefront all of those elements or aspects of the process. So I think how would she want us to take it? She would want us, I think, to hold both of those moments, that this is history and it's fiction, and not reduce the novel to either one or the other for fear that we would lose the telling of the story of war, the telling of the story of the lives of these soldiers. So I love these novels as a result of this. I love that it's a fact meets fiction and the way that she weaves them together. She is such a brilliant #1 researcher. She said there is no historical element that she can't give direct reference to. Like, she can back up all the history in this book. She spent a lot of time with the letters and the diaries of Sassoon, reading everything she could find from Rivers' notes on his patients. She's so well researched, but then she does allow the imagination to fill in those blanks and flesh out. I love that. I hadn't thought about it before until I was just talking to you, but to really flesh out, make these real life characters instead of just historical figures in that regard.
Great. Well, thank you, Wendy. So this seminar, as I mentioned, starts on November 13th with Wendy reading Pat Barker's Regeneration trilogy. That's Regeneration, The Eye in the Door, and The Ghost Road. It is a read as you go seminar. So if you think, well, I can't read 3 novels by November 13th, don't worry, we read as you go. And Wendy, as many of you know who have worked with her before, provides lots of support and information, and it'll be a really great opportunity to do a close read of this trilogy that I think is I also love it, Wendy. It's so fascinating. You meet so many different characters, and it presents so many aspects of the work that Rivers did and his own incredible curiosity about the mind and the body. So it's fascinating. So yeah, thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you November 13th, and you can register for the seminar on our website at www.classicalpursuits.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, Melanie, at info@classicalpursuits.com. Thanks again, Wendy. Really appreciate your
Thanks, Melanie. And I look forward to you joining me to read these great novels. Thanks.
I will give it a shot. All right. Thanks, Wendy. Thank you so much.